Um, so for my second argument, I wanted to pose a couple of thought experiments that I think are very revealing and are just interesting criticisms within themselves of absolute morality and also display relative morality through them. So thought experiment number one. Given the universe is created by, or its spontaneous manifestation is moderated by, a god, an array of smaller god appears to deputize the creation. In another universe, are the rules of creation the same? So, um, the question here is that if, which let me make sure this is getting paranoid that's not recording well. um, you know, even if we look at different mythologies, there's different ideas about what the stream of, sort of what is the narrative of who created what and what are the associations of that. And there's whole magical systems about that. But I think we could even look at science the same way. I think it was in Japan where scientists were yelling at ice while it was forming its crystals. And, depending on whether they'd yell at it or speak kind words to it, the crystals would form differently because of their different perspectives. So perhaps there's something intrinsic that these are different, viewpoints are metaphorical of. But to think, if we think of a whole different universe that had a whole different tangent creation, um, would the rules there really be the same? Or even on a different world, if different worlds are their creation or deputized by different beings. So I think this is an interesting question to pose to absolute morality that it feels more intuitive that that things would come about in their own way and therefore sort of have their own internally relevant rule book. And then that raises a lot of questions of what is the reason that an absolute morality might form out of everything else, basically, or of course then it wouldn't exactly be absolute, but a common morality, where would that really come from? And you could look at that all the way from the microcosm of, I was raised differently than someone else, so therefore I have a different worldview and I've come through different experiences. Or, like I said, all the way up to universes. I think that's sort of a lot of what I think of as well when I think about uh, true will manifesting from our from very high consciousness, or you could think deep consciousness, but I would specifically say something that's higher, that's maybe not even within our body. I don't want to pin it down too much because that's really trying to crystallize something that I don't know per se, but whether it's in the body or not, or completely individualized or what. But anyways, so for the second thought experiment two, what if the gods don't care about what we do, but we merely do what we want and are far more self-governing than we imagine? Any so-called natural consequences of our actions are not divinely mandated, but arise out of chaos from the opposition of different wills, of different true wills, of different whole slants of someone's higher consciousness, of sort of the nectar of their whole being that's driving them as a whole being. In other words, what if bad things happen when we violate social contracts and not because our actions are wrong based on ultimate morality? So, here I'm saying that the violation of a social contract of, sort of an agreement that's made, maybe not verbally, but just, a something that exists between us all, um, how does that sort of um, would that really be different? And would there really be much consequences to viewing it that way? I think that viewing it that way is sort of more natural to what we actually see um, in the world, in the phenomenal world. So I think because ultimate morality, and I think this is um, a little bit I'm strawmanning it here, but I mean to say that, um, I mean, ultimate morality. It depends how what the scale of it is, what the focus of it is. If it's a very detailed ultimate morality, then I think there's it's hard to say that such a thing is true when people do have different opinions. And what's an ultimate morality if there isn't some system such as karma that's going to immediately bite your ass, basically. If it's a more retracted ultimate morality, like in general a few things appear to be true over cultures, that's a little bit different, and I think that there's some discussion to be had on that front. um I still think ultimately that, like even in the structure of our physical bodies, I think that there's just chaotically things that become apparent, that, are just better or worse generally. But I wouldn't put that in the realm of that's per se ultimate, but it's more like, what's the word? Emergent almost. Um, so I think there's no ultimate way to explain all of our social behavior. Like sometimes you do something to someone, and ultimately what is the ultimate? If I do something, I socially hurt somebody, or I say something, I know I transgress them somehow, and I feel that in my body, but what's the ultimate standard that actually tells me that I was wrong, besides me just feeling like it was wrong? So this is where I find the complexity of social contracts and whatnot a little more honest as to, where is morality actually coming from? In fact, I would even go so far as to say, like, if I said something hurtful to someone and I feel guilt, maybe I'm actually almost like telepathically picking up on their guilt, their hurt or anger towards me for what I said. And I found that to be the case in some cases. I'm actually, picking up on something they're feeling and sort of empathically imposing on me. So it becomes really sticky to even sort out, you know, if I feel guilt or shame about something, how can I even know if that's ultimate? I don't think that that's a good barometer to know the ultimate truth. Um, Also, I want to go on and say that, um, this morality comes into more of a speculation of what is the cosmic order, what is the dominion, because, um, pedestrian morality of like, why shouldn't I stab someone at the supermarket? Even if we lived in some anarchy, if I do some nonsense, it's still going to, there's going to be a logical reason to prevent me from doing certain activities, or anyone else for that matter. So I would like to divorce the conversation from that. Not that we've gone there at all. We talked about that before, but I think it's an interesting point to make that, typically when people think ultimate morality, they're thinking, why shouldn't you steal someone else's wife? I think that really that's almost a different concept of morality than we're talking about, because there's actually logical reasons why that would be damaging to practically practically everyone, why it would damage maybe even the whole society in a really metaphorical way. um but asking the question, from which dominion does morality arise? Is it my dominion that, you know um I don't want to be stabbed, so therefore I don't want other people to be stabbed because other people are stabbed. and then it's like, maybe I'm wondering when I'll get stabbed because I stood by and watched someone else get stabbed. So it's almost like a little bit karmic almost. So that's a bit of a tangent, but I think it's a good one to point out. I have just a few more points here. So these thought experiments sort of raise these questions that I think are almost unanswerable about the topic of like true will versus absolute morality. Like what is the absolute morality? But then it sort of, I feel it backs things into the more abstract, ground of true will, of like, it's chaotic, and everyone has different wills, and different, even gods per se and spirits have different wills, and these are all coming into conversation to produce something that is almost what appears to be an absolute morality. It's just that this in my mind, this absolute morality isn't pre-existing to of individualized intelligences. Rather, the individualized intelligences produce it as a byproduct of simply existing, of you know pouring their energy into the world by just simply being here. um, you know, so I would say that let me back up here. Yeah, I would also like to mention that different philosophical systems have different views of what morality is. I think there's some agreement between them. I haven't really gone in and tinkered around and seen if, how much agreement or disagreement there is between systems, but I think the fact that there are many philosophical systems um, already causes an issue of pinning down what an ultimate morality may be. And, you know, especially I would go to the topic of religion because through religion people come into communion with divine energy. They they experience the all, and so often they go out and tell other people why they need to experience the all, the divine energy through their path, instead of through another religion. And yet the religions are incompatible, but they give people the same experience. So this is another thing where people can make the premises of their own religion very real through their own mentality. Like sometimes people will play with tarot cards and then suddenly they'll be like under a curse or something, and practically it almost sounds, I would say probably they curse themselves, and a lot of magicians would have that take. You know what I mean? So that's kind of that's like another way that these things can look. This is another manifestation of how one's will expresses itself in reality. So, okay, that's my second argument.
Okay, you want me to respond?
Yes.
Okay, so just a quick clarification. So in the first aspect of the debate, in the first video, we basically talked about it was kind of when I deployed Nietzsche and Darwin to go against Crowley as who you were using. Basically, I assume that now you've kind of dispensed with Crowley as the moral standard bearer, essentially, because it sounds like you've actually moved to a more Schopenhauer, Arthur Schopenhauer perspective, which actually would make a lot of sense because from my analysis, he actually combined the German philosophy and also a Hindu understanding. And that kind of puts him in actually the same thought processes as you. So um, I would say that Nietzsche and Darwin, although they would have had vastly different perspectives on what the absolute will was that you described earlier, I just wanted to give a little bit of a synopsis so we both are on the same page. Because it seems that now you've decided to deploy Schopenhauer in place, and you tapped out Crowley and now substituted Schopenhauer, which I'm totally fine with, um, whether that was intentional or otherwise.
Yeah.
But so
Well,
so basically, the absolute will, a concept which is associated with Schopenhauer, he defined it more like a blind, irrational cosmic force. Um, Driving life. And I think that Darwin, to contrast that, would have taken a much more secular scientific approach, given his evolutionary biological survival of the fittest theory of evolution that I deployed earlier. And I basically said that through this modern Nietzschean Darwinian approach, we can kind of dispense with the old gods because you asked earlier, um, about where was I appealing to, what higher authority did I appeal to, on what grounds. And I guess my answer to that would be that Nietzsche would say that the modern world, Darwinism, science, and humanism, secularism, had already dispensed with the biblical and Bronze Age interpretations. And that is the reason why we don't need to appeal to those things anymore. We don't need to appeal to a cosmic irrational force. We would be, or a mysterious force. We would be appealing to the forces of the will to power, which is a deeply ingrained biological as well as spiritual process that Nietzsche and Darwin observed. And if you write with blood, then you'll also find that blood is spirit, as Nietzsche said. And that would basically entail the idea that the will to power is not merely a cosmic force completely divorced from the materialist world that somehow influences us like the planets or tarot cards, like you mentioned, but is actually a very grounded biological process in which uh, uh, human beings would have argued that a fundamental driving force is the will to power, is to the urge to expand, overcome, like that meme, like adapt, overcome, like that Bear Grylls meme, the urge to overcome obstacles and create and impose values. And that he would distinguish, and he would say that morality, or because remember, I'm taking a Nietzschean Darwinian approach to this, and he would definitely have taken not a good versus evil perspective, but a master morality versus herd morality perspective. And Nietzsche viewed this the nature of will, the qualia of that will is a natural sense, a biological Darwinian sense. And um, it was a irrational yet creative destructive force. The essence of life itself is both life and death. It is destruction and creation. He famously declared that the will to power is nothing besides that. That it is both the will to power is the destruction, the destructive force of humanity, and the amazing, beautiful, life-giving capacity that's imbued within us. So I think that it was all, if you take a Darwinian approach and a Nietzschean approach, he would have already dispensed with the old gods. He already told you that they were dead.
Yeah, so
And
I think
oh, sorry, I wasn't
uh,
sure if,
oh,
oh, sorry, yeah,
if
continue.
you
What were
want
you
to
going to
keep
say? I
if you
wasn't done yet. No, I had
okay,
some
yeah,
more to say,
keep
but
going,
if
yeah.
you wanted to, no, no, you can interlope if you want. I don't
Oh,
mind if you want to have to ask a question. I was in the midst of a rant, but go for it.
oh,
Sometimes
okay.
I'm pausing. It's for rhetoric. It's for rhetorical purposes. It makes me
Okay.
sound more important if I pause in the middle of a sentence after I
Okay,
say things like
just
God
continue.
is
I
dead.
had like a full response really. So
No, no, it was on purpose because after I said that Nietzsche already told you God is dead and we killed him. Um, and Hegel also told you that as well before Nietzsche did, but he said it from a different perspective. Like if you remember, Nietzsche wasn't, even though he wrote a book called The Antichrist, he wasn't summoning Satan. He was actually or trying to inhabit it. He was trying to create a new paradigm or trying to resurrect a Homeric paradigm, one that predated the Socratic individual, because Socrates is the hero of the soul. He is the hero of the good man. He is the man who does no one wrong. He is the ultimate good perspective, right? And the moral man. And basically, Nietzsche would say that the philosophers, the philosophers' basically appearance shows that the society is already doomed, because once you start asking questions like what is morality, you're already lost. It's like a signpost, an indication that you're already lost. And so essentially, by asking those questions, you're already indicating that society is doomed and we've already passed through our golden era. And the Greeks, basically, Nietzsche wanted to go back to the era of the hero, of the tragedian, of the tragic hero, and because he believed that that is a higher moral value, that is the master morality, that is the man of the great man and women out of time, the great man and women of history, people like Napoleon, Julius Caesar, Socrates, Jesus, people like this who basically are such an important character that, or Cleopatra, like these people that basically were so important that their names still ring with truth and life even to this day, thousands of years later, because of they had such an effect. So I think that, and those people transcend to a degree time and space and perhaps even morality itself. And I think that you can argue that from this perspective, that the chaotic cosmic irrationality that was referenced earlier, or the you asked me a lot of questions basically about what am I appealing to, and I guess I would be appealing to the Nietzschean Darwinian perspective, which is the that humanity must become. Humanity is a process of unfolding, and we are headed in a Hegelian sense towards a great project, a great work, if you will, a magnum opus.
I
And
mean,
that is part of that. I'm not reading anything. This is just me talking regular. Continue your
yeah.
turn.
No, I wasn't gonna ask if you're reading. I guess are you saying that you said that maybe some of these people transcend morality? Are you saying that perhaps
Mhm. Well,
absolute
they
morality?
transcend good and evil. They transcend good and evil. No, no, they don't. They transcend good and evil
Okay,
morality.
okay.
That's what I mean. Like beyond good and evil. Like I'm just like quoting stuff from his book.
Ah,
I'm
okay.
paraphrasing it in my head.
Nice.